Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining today's NTRK Global Patient Summit. My name is Tim Turnham, and I'll be facilitating parts of the meeting today and helping walk us through the day. We have a very full and big day lined up with a lot of people who are living with TRK fusion cancer speaking, and people who have loved ones who are living with TRK fusion cancer speaking, and a whole host of physicians and researchers and healthcare providers who will be talking about issues that we believe are important and relevant to all of you who have decided to call in today. So thank you for joining us. We will have a lot of opportunities for questions and for dialogue, so feel free to drop questions in the chat. You'll see at the bottom of your screen, I believe, a little icon that says chat. If you have questions along the way, drop them in there. We'll be capturing those, and we'll get to as many of those as we can. So we're going to, first of all, you've gotten to notice that we're recording this. It's only, we're recording this so that the NTRKers can make this available for other people who aren't able to join live today. And we want this material to be continued in the future. We have to say this disclaimer, this is not intended to substitute for medical advice or diagnosis or treatment. We will encourage people to seek the advice of their own physician or other qualified healthcare professionals around any medical questions or conditions. And I will say, I said this about the questions, even though we will have teams of doctors on here, they will not be able to talk to any specific person's situation. In other words, they won't be able to tell you what you need to do in this situation, but you could ask questions like, what do you think the long-term impact of being on these drugs may be, or what new drugs do you think may be coming down the line? Generic, general questions they'll be happy to answer in great detail. Okay, if we could go to the next slide. Again, welcome. The key is we really believe that by coming together, we can raise more awareness about NTRK gene fusion cancer, advocate for better outcomes. This is a beginning of that. It's a chance to connect with each other, to share experiences, to meet some clinical experts, and find out how to advocate for yourselves and for others who are experiencing this kind of cancer, and to learn from each other. And we hope that you'll do that. And we hope it is not the only time that you'll get involved with the NTRKers, but we'll consider following them on Facebook, being involved with the website, and volunteering. Okay, next slide, please. A few little details. Please remain on mute unless you're speaking. Relax and enjoy yourself. We hope that this will be informal and conversational, and we believe that the time will pass by quickly. Do get involved. Let us know what you have, questions you might have, or comments you might have. Take breaks if you need to. Stand up, walk around, listen in the background, and again, submit questions via the chat button. And we will have a post-meeting survey we would love for you to fill out, because we always want to learn and make sure we do things better and better. Okay, next slide, please. Just a little bit of a preview of the day. We're going to hear through the day from different patients who will be speaking, as I said, but the bulk of the day is broken up into 4 panels. And the first 2 panels are about living on a TRK fusion inhibitor. The first panel will be from a patient perspective, the second panel from a physician perspective, and then both panels will come together and have a Q&A session, so a dialogue with both patients and physicians. This is the opportunity for you to submit your questions. We have already had some questions submitted in advance, so thank you for that, and we'll have a real dialogue around that. And then next slide, please. And then in the afternoon, we'll focus on the future and what is coming down the line. So what is the current state of research? What are the things people are investigating now? What are the current clinical trials? What are the questions being answered? And what are the questions that haven't yet been addressed? What are the things you would like to know that you don't know now? And so we have, again, panels of experts who will be doing all of this. In the same way as this morning, we'll have the opportunity for people to ask questions and interact with all of the people who've done these presentations. Okay, we can go to the next slide. Just a couple of words about NTRK, and most of you probably know this, but I'm going to do this very quickly. So all cells grow and divide, right? You cut your hand, you need to heal that cut, and the body says, hey, grow some new cells and heal up that cut so you don't have a cut all the time. Sometimes in that process, things go wrong. There's an error in the DNA. There's something that's happened that's caused that DNA to have some kind of a change or switch. Most of the time when that damage happens, the body just takes care of it. They have really good mechanisms for repairing DNA and really good signals that if the cell has gone bad, it should just be kind of gotten rid of so you don't have to worry about it anymore. Sometimes, though, the damage happens and the body's not able to fix the damage. The cell doesn't destroy itself, the cell can't fix itself, and then you have an abnormal cell. And that damaged DNA leads to tumors, and the tumors somehow escape the immune system, and that's where we have cancer. Go to the next slide, please. A lot of the things that happen is that you have an error in the DNA, but sometimes what happens is that two pieces of your DNA inappropriately join together. So there's a gene called the NTRK gene, and it codes for a protein called TRK. And that gene is there, and it helps tell a cell when to grow and divide. In TRK fusion cancer, somehow or another, that TRK gene gets stuck onto an unrelated gene and creates an altered protein that is turned on all the time. And it's like sticking the accelerator on a car. It's constantly telling that cell, grow and divide, grow and divide, grow and divide, even though it shouldn't be. And that's what causes TRK fusion cancer. It occurs in a lot of different kinds of cancers. And the drugs for TRK fusion cancer were the very first ever that were developed in a way that's kind of, it doesn't matter what kind of cancer you have, as long as you have this TRK fusion. Most of the time when you do clinical trials, you'll have a clinical trial in breast cancer or thyroid cancer or sarcoma or glioblastoma. In this case, it was a trial for anybody with any kind of a solid tumor, as long as you had the TRK fusion. Innovative, brand new way of doing things. Okay, and now the next slide. And we have a lot of tests that are available for looking for these genomic alterations. And increasingly, we find that it is critical that people know exactly what their cancer is and having these tests done to make sure that everyone is aware of all the treatment options available to them. We are now 5 years out from the very first approval of a TRK fusion inhibitor. That's Vitrakvi. There are other ones that are on the market or in development, which is great, but 5 years out. And we will have people you hear from today who have been on this medicine for 5 years. So a remarkable, amazing breakthrough. And it's made a huge, huge difference in the lives of these cancer patients. Again, not very common, but these drugs are game changers for that group of people. Okay, enough about all of that. Next slide, please. I'm really happy to quit talking and to turn it over to one of the people who is really responsible for us being here today, one of the co-founders of the NTRKers Foundation, Susan Spinoza. I'll turn it over to you, Susan.
Thanks, Tim. Hi, everybody. I'm Susan Spinoza. Tim mentioned, I'm one of the patient founders of the NTRKers. I was diagnosed in 2004 with thyroid cancer, and then it wasn't until 2018 that I was finally diagnosed with NTRK gene fusion thyroid cancer. So I've been on an NTRK inhibitor for a little bit over 5 years. And we started the NTRKers really to unite and support each other and to make sure that every adult and child with NTRK gene fusion has the best chance of living life to the fullest. Spreading awareness and knowledge of NTRK is so important. We want to make sure everyone has access, regardless of where they reside, to testing, treatment, and also updated research. We are a nonprofit, so we welcome any support, but we also welcome any volunteers who want to support us as well. So if you're interested, please reach out at any time, and we'll be very happy to talk to you. Finally, oh, I'm sorry. You can. We also have our closed Facebook group where you can join us. We have our website, ntrkers.org. We're also on Twitter and then the YouTube video or channel. Finally, I want to make sure I thank Bayer and Genentech, because with their support, we're able to host this important patient summit today. And I also want to give a big thank you to all the panelists and speakers today who have volunteered their time to help us. And I'm really looking forward to today being an interactive day. So thank you very much, everybody. And Tim, I'll pass it back on to you.
Hello,
Is Tim
all.
there, or is he on mute? Okay.
Uh,
Go ahead. Go ahead. Start your story. Thank you.
Yeah, hi. Hello, all. My name is Vidas, and this is my wife, Lena. We are parents of our little boy, Benas. Originally, we are from Lithuania, but we live in UK for many years, and both our kids was born here in UK. Sorry, but we decided to write down our short version of 3 years story since we found that lump on our son's neck. So one evening on October 2020, we found a lump on our son's neck. No symptoms, no pain, nothing. Went to hospital straight away. After various scans, blood tests, and biopsy taken, we were told that it was very rare tumor called CD34S100, mesenchymal tumor with neural differential NTRK fusion, and chemo or radiotherapy wouldn't work. The only hope was larotrectinib treatment. It was a shock for us, of course. No info about it, no help from doctors, no answers, and all this was in COVID period. Glad we had our friend Vaida, who took a lot of pressure from us. She was helping to communicate with doctors on our behalf. Benno started the treatment on Christmas Day in 2020. The tumor started shrinking straight away. By the June 2021, the tumor was no longer visible in the scans. Nearly a year after tumor was gone, therapy was stopped. We couldn't believe in that. We rang the bell. We started celebrating. As Benas was in remission, he was monitored closely every 3 months. And after second MRI scan, we received a call from doctor who was asking to come to hospital ASAP. The cancer was back. This time it was caught early, so doctor decided to remove it by surgery. The surgery was arranged pretty quickly. They wanted to catch it while it was small, as it was on the neck between lots of blood vessels, veins, and nerves. The procedure went really well, and the surgeon told us she removed it all. The tumor was sent to the lab for genomic testing. And now it's 9 months later, and we still don't have any info regarding this. No results back to us. So Benas was monitored closely again with more blood tests and MRI scans. About 6 months after the surgery, another call from doctor saying to come to hospital ASAP again. The cancer was back again. Doctor said that the only option would be laro treatment again, no surgical treatment this time. We had to wait a long time, do more CT and PET scans. Finally, after nearly 2 months' time, Benna start laro treatment again. Now we just waiting for the first MRI scan, and hopefully it will show that the treatment is working. There's no mutation in that, because there's no plan B at the moment. So here we are.
Thank you for your story, Vidas and Lena. And I know that when we talked to you about telling the story, you said, how can we tell the story in such a short time? We could talk for hours about our son. And thank you, though, for telling the journey and for your story. I think a lot of people resonate with what you've said, the uncertainty and the test and the waiting and all of those things. And I hope that that today you'll help maybe answer some of the questions you have and give you more information. And I'm sure that your story has helped inspire other people. So thank you. Okay, let's move on to the next slide if we could. And so this next section, we'll move right into it, is living on a track fusion inhibitor. And the facilitator for this session is Sandra Montes. And some of you will know her from her time at MD Anderson. And she was there for a long time and worked with a lot of people in the track fusion space. And then has now moved to Sydney, Australia, which means it's in the middle of the night for her now. So Sandra, thank you for doing this, and I'll let you get started with the first panel.
Thank you so much, Tim. So yes, if I'm yawning, it's not because I'm bored. It's because it's about 1:15 in the morning here currently. So yes, as Tim said, I actually did the first clinical trial of patients with TRK inhibitors. And also we enrolled, I think, the second patient in the world to ever take a TRK inhibitor. And I've probably put somewhere in the realm of maybe 50 or 60 patients on TRK inhibitors and identified about 150 TRK fusion patients. So the panelists on this panel are going to be Leslie and Lakeland, Chris, Carter, and Ben. I think I know pretty much everybody through the Facebook group. And I was just going to start, if everyone wants to do a brief introduction and then just a 1-minute introduction each. And then I'll start by some directed questions and see how the conversation goes. So maybe we'll start with you, Carter.
Yeah, so I am Carter Hook, and I've been on the TRK for since the middle of 2017. So I've been on for a good while. I'm on cycle 83. And I've had good results. So.
Excellent. Thank you. Leslie, do you want to go next?
Sure. Please don't mind a little newborn in the background. We have a 2-week-old, so we might have a few screaming moments. So my name's Lakeland. My name's Leslie, and my daughter is Lakeland. And we've been on this since February of 2017. So she is one of the longest lasting children on the laratrexenib, and she is doing wonderful. I am eager to share her story because I think Lena and them will feel a little bit more comfortable with going back on laratrexenib and hopefully find some hope in their son's journey. So we have been doing this, and we travel to Boston every month from North Carolina for her to meet with her team and be monitored. And I can just say this was a lifesaver for us. And I'm so happy to be on this seminar so that we can just spread the word and help more people to show that this is a viable option for a very, very rare cancer that all of you are going through.
Leslie, we need to update that photo. Lakeland's about 3 times that size now.
Oh yeah, so she is actually, she just turned 10.
Yeah.
And what a milestone, because we didn't know when she was diagnosed at 3.5 if we'd even make it that far. So we are so excited that we celebrate our 10th birthday.
Yeah. Thank you, Leslie. Ben?
Hi, my name is Ben Lascano. I'm 40 years old and I live in East Texas. And I'm married, have 3 children, 3 boys, and was diagnosed with papillary thyroid carcinoma in early 2020. And I got all the first and second line treatments with their surgeries and radioactive iodine. And after almost 2 years of that, I found a doctor that was willing to test me. Well, actually, I had multiple genomic testing profiles, but one of them found the TRK fusion in early 2021, and I'm sorry, early 2022, and then started entrectinib as a trial. Not really desperate for it, but I couldn't tolerate it the first week, and so my doctor stopped me. That was March of 2022, and he said, "Let's watch and wait." And so by August, I realized I had a lot of progression in my neck and needed to go back. And this time, I went on larotrectinib September 2022, and I just celebrated a year on larotrectinib with what seems to be a complete response.
Awesome, Ben. Thank you so much. And last but not least, Chris.
Hello. I'm Chris Allis. I'm 32 years old. I was diagnosed with a pretty rare form of sarcoma, myopericytoma, in January of 2016. Had a first round, I was about 25 then, had a first round of pazopanib, was on that for a while, made me pretty sick. I found my cancer by accident. I recently retired, but I was a deputy sheriff here in California. Was chasing a guy, stepped on a nail, and started having some issues with my back, and a scan picked up a ton of masses in my lungs. So by the time they diagnosed me January of 2016, I was, stage 4 inoperable. I worked with oncologists in Stanford, and I also went to MD Anderson, and both hospitals kind of agreed that they should do genomic testing. They had to test my tumor 3 times, or the tumor they removed, they had to test it 3 times. Finally, I came back with a NTRK fusion. I think it was NTRK3 EVTK6, if I recall. I started very early on larotrectinib. I started with the clinical research team at Stanford at late 2016, and I left the clinical trials a few years back, just because it was getting real hard for me to go back and forth. I got 4 little kiddos, 6 and under. And with, my occupation, it was becoming more and more difficult. So I left clinical studies, but I've been on it ever since. I don't know what cycle it would be now, but, last scans were good, hoping to continue with that.
Awesome, Chris. Thank you so much.
No problem.
So I thought I would start, like I said, with some targeted questions, see how the conversation went. I might start with Leslie and Lakeland. What do you think you know now that you wish you had known, early on, within the first 6 months of taking larotrectinib or any NTRK inhibitor?
So it's interesting you asked that because, Lakeland was diagnosed with her rare sarcoma in her brachial plexus. I didn't really get into that before so that everyone knows. From her C5 to her T1. So it's kind of wrapped around all the nerves that feed her right arm. And she was only 3.5 when we diagnosed her. And it was a very challenging diagnosis, as everyone has seemed to have the same issue where no one really knows what it is. And until you actually do sequencing, do you find out that it's this cancer that doesn't respond to typical types of treatment. So being 3.5, there was very, very little communication from her end to tell me what she felt, what she didn't feel, what the side effects were. She was number 17 on phase 1 trial. So she was one of the first to take this medicine. And as a parent, you never want to put your kid in a clinical trial. You want to give them medicine that you know what's going to happen. But that wasn't an option for us. And so going into it, we didn't know what the side effects were. We didn't know UTIs or the body pains that come when you don't take your medicine, an hour before it's actually due, or hot baths that would trigger her pain in her arm, things like that. Also food, right? So she was 3.5. She didn't eat anything before she started larotrectinib, and then she started eating a ton and salty foods. And I think for me, the side effects for, especially for children, knowing what they're going to endure, knowing that their behavior might be off, or how to handle and how to parent through the side effects that come with larotrectinib. And as an adult, we can communicate those things. We can say we feel foggy or we feel dizzy, but as a child, it's very difficult. And even today, she's 10, but she's been living on this drug along with a ton of pain medicine. So her normal is not a normal. So we don't really know until we got on with the NTRKers Facebook page, did we actually start learning what the adults were feeling and that what she was probably feeling. And we ended up meeting another child in Boston that was on this medication at one point, and she was older than Lakeland, and she was able to share with me, like, hot baths hurt me. I don't like hot baths, and I really like steak, and I can't get enough water. Like, those things helped me be able to parent her. So I think the first 6 months of treatment, having the ability to know what are you going to feel, and I know everyone's different, but 6 years ago, we didn't even know what they were going to feel. And so it was a learning experience. And now we continually learn more and more and say, oh, are your kids showing anxiety? Are they showing irritability when it's time for medicine? Before, I might have thought it was just her personality, but now it's associated with, she gets pretty irritable before it's time for her medicine, right? So I think for me, that's the biggest thing, just for a caregiver to a child.
Yeah. Yeah, really interesting. You should say that, because I've always thought that you and some of the earlier other parents are so generous with your time on the Facebook group to help other people when their children are having side effects, and exactly right, when they can't verbalize or articulate what they are. Yeah. All right, Carter, same question for you, because I know you've been on for a long time. we met when you started. So what do you think, what do you know now that you wish you had known before you'd started?
So I had a surgery to remove. I have salivary duct carcinoma, so I had a complete parodontectomy where they removed the tumor and salivary gland and whatever, and then I did 7 weeks of radiation. So the first thing I wish I had known was that the cancer I had wouldn't respond to the radiation, and I wouldn't have had to endure the radiation, and could have gotten straight on larotrectinib at the time and prevented those things. But the main thing for me was the not knowing of what's out there. And even my doctors at Emory, before I came to see you at MD Anderson, once my cancer had metastasized, they were trying to put me on a different drug, but it wasn't a high percentage rate of success. So when I told them I was going to go to MD Anderson, they were like, well, they're not doing anything that we're not doing. And I'm like, well, I'll go out there and see for myself. So that was the main thing for me, was that there wasn't a wealth of knowledge of other options, and you had to be your own advocate and whatnot. But in starting the drug itself, I had a little bit of an idea from you about some of the side effects that people were getting. But I didn't experience those for, I don't remember exactly how long, probably six months.
Yeah.
But, I had a little bit of knowledge, but not in a full in-depth realization till I started feeling the withdrawal side effects, or the main side effect that I get. But I did have a great coordinator at MD Anderson and yourself. So I had a lot of information when I got started. But my biggest thing now is still that there wasn't a way for somebody to reach out to me. I had to reach out myself. So that was the main thing for me, was the
Yeah.
knowledge of finding things.
Yeah, I think from memory, Carter, you were diagnosed with they'd said an acidic cell carcinoma, and it wasn't until you came to us and we identified the NTRK fusion that we changed your diagnosis.
Correct.
The salivary gland, a secretory salivary gland cancer, which is pathognomonic with NTRK3 ETV6 fusion. So Ben, I was going to throw a question at you that I think is, really hard for people with rare cancers, as well as people with a, gene fusion. Where are you finding the best information? Are you finding information from published papers? Are your physicians able to provide you with information? Yeah.
Thanks for asking. Probably the number one steady flow of information comes from the NTRK Facebook group. When I got on it, it was probably weeks and weeks of just reading posts and clicking on links. Susan and you, Sandra, share. Brianne, I think, also shares a lot of new articles, and so I read those. What I really love is when the doctors do these, I don't know, these videos like targeted oncology or onc live, and so I watch those, and they're really excited to share information breakthroughs, and it's very, it's facts. It's not so much opinion or trajectories. They're looking at things that they've discovered, and so I really enjoy getting information from there. The second, I want to say the doctors that I deal with in North and East Texas are not where I get my information from, and it's not that they're not good doctors. It's that this is such a rare treatment with NTRK fusion. They just don't know. They're oncologists for so many patients and so many common cancers that they just don't have any patients like me. And so I find that the first doctor that can say, I just don't know, then that's the one that I can trust. Because if you get somebody that just throws stuff at you, then you feel like you don't understand what's going on. And thankfully, I only felt like I had one of those, and I think that thankfully it was him that found the NTRK fusion through the Caris profile that they did, the sequence profile on me, and it was a shot in the dark. It was the third profile, and it came back, and he said, "You got the magic lock and key, or the lock and key that's going to save your life." And he's just celebrating, and I just didn't understand. And he told me just how high the percentage response rate was, ORR or whatever they call it, and I just didn't believe it. And so a year later, I had a scan yesterday, and it's the third scan in a row with 0 abnormal findings from my base of skull down to my pelvis. So I really have been really just blessed by people on NTRK. I'm also a part of a group called Thyroid Cancer Support Group out of DFW, Dallas Fort Worth. They've helped me with information, and the Batracby website is really good. I like their information that they have. It's not super exhaustive with as far as like the amount of patients, because there's not that many, after 7, 8 years. But everything helps. The only thing I wish that I would have known earlier was that there's a lot of side effects that they don't know yet, and you're discovering them on the way.
Right. Yeah, no, that's absolutely true, Ben. I remember when we were doing the early phase development of this drug, of these drugs, patients would come in with side effects. I wouldn't say we blew off, but when people would say, "Oh, I just feel a little bit strange around 3 p.m. or 4 p.m." We'd never had a drug with withdrawal side effects. And like when patients started to put on weight, patients with cancer generally have lost a significant amount of weight, and we didn't see them beforehand. So we kind of thought they were getting back to their normal weight. And it really wasn't until 6 or 12 months in, when 3 or 4 patients are reporting, that we were like, okay, there's something here. So I think fortunately, 6 years down the track, 5 years down, well, I guess 8 years down the track from the first trials, where we know more. But yeah, the patient pool is still so small that there's a lot more to find out. Chris, I was going to ask you, you have an extremely rare cancer. I've only ever seen maybe 2 or 3 of them. And in fact, Dr. Conley, who's coming on next, is one of our sarcoma experts at MD Anderson. But I was going to ask you, what concerns do you have? Do you have any concerns? I shouldn't say what. Do you have any concerns about taking these NTRK inhibitors longer term? Because they are drugs often, especially in adults, that you may need to take longer term. Do you have any concerns? What are your thoughts? And would there ever be, do you ever have conversations or thinking about stopping?
Yeah, actually, we just recently had this conversation, my oncology team and I, because my response has been, much the same as Ben, where they haven't seen anything, right? I guess whatever they call it, like no evidence of disease or what have you. And I've been like that for, knock on wood, for pretty much since I've started the entrectinib. Yeah, I mean, there's definitely concerns about the long-term use, because everybody's basically gleaming the cube from us patients, right? They're figuring out this information as they go. It's hindsight, because what you said about like the withdrawal pain. I remember when I first started having that, and they had me tested for every kind of virus under the sun, because they're like, "Oh, you have the flu," and I'm like, "No, this doesn't," I mean, fortunately, my oncology team was really good. They listened to my concerns, and like Ben said, sometimes they just don't know, and they were honest with me, but they were like, "Let's check for this, let's check for that." I had to wear like a Holter monitor. I had, do all these different,
we did
things.
the same thing.
Yeah, and I was, the weight gain thing for me was huge, because I was, as I said, I was a deputy sheriff here in California, and I was on a very busy SWAT team, which required me to maintain a pretty high level of physical fitness. And I was over here like gaining weight, and I had like guys on my SWAT team were like, "Geez, dude, you're putting on a few pounds." And I'm like talking to my oncology team like, "Hey, what's going on? There's no way. I'm eating so good. I exercise every day. I'm really in tune with my nutrition. What's going on?" And we figure these things out on the way. And we've tried different things along the way. Like for the weight gain, we tried metformin, couldn't really tolerate it. I've got to a point where my weight gain is kind of like stabilized, and kind of able to control it. And then we balance things, right? Like, how much do I want to these side effects? Do I want to deal with more side effects from taking another potential medication? So there's been concerns. We spoke recently about maybe reducing my dose of medication, because I've started to have a bit more kind of like neurological side effects, a little bit of the like peripheral neuropathy, and a bit of dizziness here and there. And I, looking back in hindsight, not knowing the side effects, that, like I said, they're figuring them out. There was times at work when I could recall where I've been, "Oh man, I got kind of dizzy. That's weird. I got kind of dizzy," and I never really thought it was the medication, because I felt otherwise, compared to the stuff that I was the chemo I was on before, I was very grateful because the
Yeah.
side effects that I'm dealing with now, compared to the ones I was dealing with before, I was like, hey, not a big deal, you know.
Yeah.
But you know, some of them have gotten worse, and I've started to have a little bit of depression in my WBCs, you know, nothing super alarming, but we recently discussed, you know, hey, we don't know all these side effects. We do know now that long-term use, some folks do have a little bit of depression of the WBCs and this and that. And we discussed going down to a lower dose, you know, I'm on 100 milligrams twice a day. We discussed going on to 75 milligrams. They did a brain MRI, of course, first before we, you know, even discussed this with the dizziness, just to make sure there wasn't nothing amok. And at the end of the day, me, my wife, my oncology team, we kind of came to the, you know, the conclusion, like, or decision is like, what, you know, why ruin a good thing? The way the side effects that I'm having now, they can be inconvenient at times. Like I said, I have 4 little kiddos. I'm very active. I try to run around and play with them very much now. And so sometimes it sucks, you know, when you have to lay down for an hour before your dose time, or sometimes a little bit even longer. But you know, I'd rather not ruin a good thing. You know, my response has been going good, and that's kind of the determination we made, is that we're gonna continue going on while I'm responding to the larotrectinib and taking the medication, because you know, it seems like as people are on this medication longer, and it's the things you notice being part of this Facebook group, like the Facebook group has been great, you know, for information, because I think with my cancer diagnosis, I was on a Facebook group for myopericytomas before, and the Facebook group, I don't even know if it exists anymore. It was called 1 of 15 because there was 15 of us. So, and they were all over the world, but it was just nobody knew anything, you know, about what we had. So, you know, it's been great learning and sharing information, but you know, sometimes, you know, you go on there and you see, oh, somebody's become resistant to it. And, you know, there's this next class medication. And we just, with all of that, like, I've decided that, you know, with my team, that we're just going to stay the course.
Yeah.
You know, I guess my opinion of it is kind of like, I don't want to ruin a good thing. If it becomes a point where, you know, it's really damaging my health to stay on it, or the side effects become so, you know, so intolerable, like my blood work, all that stuff generally looks good, then we'll have the discussion again. But right now,
I'm glad that, oh, sorry.
No, I just, you know, you got to weigh the decision. It's like it's a scale, you know, weighing the pros and cons, and I mean, we don't know. We don't know if I come off of it, what's going to happen. And that's scary, you know?
Yes. Yeah, I think it sounds like you've got really good support, and you're making a decision like with your care team and your family that's best for you. And I think that's really the best that you can ask for. Tim, do we have time for another question, or are we moving into the next session?
We got started a little bit late. You're welcome to take 97 more seconds, more or less.
I was actually going to.
So maybe a quick question with quick, tight responses. Yeah,
I was just going to ask another quick question of Leslie. Same question that I just asked Chris. Because the story in pediatrics is a bit different, where patients can stop and start, and some patients can have residual disease and stop depending on the cancer type. So what are your concerns as a parent for having Lakeland, you know, on drug longer term, and what has been your experience with the care team on that? We've got about, you know, a minute left.
All right, here's my quick response. We did take a holiday for Lakeland in 2018, and in a matter of a few weeks, her tumor had grown back almost double its size. And so we have learned, we've also had the conversation with our oncology team about holidays from the break of larotrectinib, and we have decided that, like Chris, it's not worth it until we have more research out there to say what she can take as an alternative. Taking her off the drug, it seems like these type of track fusion cancers, they get put to sleep, but then once you're taken off, if you're inoperable like she is and like Chris, then they grow back, and it's not worth seeing if it works or doesn't work for us. I'd rather just, she's handling the side effects. It is interesting, Chris, to hear about the peripheral neuropathy and the dizziness, because again, what my daughter's experiencing on a day-to-day basis is her norm. So I don't know those things. And as she gets older, trying to figure out what the long-term, like fertility, is that going to be an issue when she gets older? Is kidney disease going to be an issue? So all these things are questionable, but today we're thankful that she's alive and she's thriving like a 10-year-old. And so we have to be grateful for that, and just the fear of no research in the future or what her options are in the future, because obviously the idea is to get her off and in remission. I just don't feel like that is in the cards currently. Was that quick enough and thorough enough?
Perfect, Leslie. And I think it speaks for what a lot of patients, carers, and families feel.
Yeah, when someone posts about that on our team about taking a holiday, I get super nervous for them, for the fact that we do see, they have seen this, where they grow back pretty quickly. Our newest side effect too, I wanted to share this as well, is bone fractures. Lakeland has had many bone fractures over the past year. And most of them are from playing sports and doing things, but a typical hit that a normal kid would take wouldn't necessarily cause a bone fracture, and she's seeing those. So that is a downfall that I don't know if other adults are seeing as well, but we have seen that with Lake, and in her, more so like her hands and her knees and her feet.
Thank you again for sharing, Leslie, and being such a great advocate.
Sandra, if I may, I know I said we only had a minute or two left, but there is a question that came up in chat, and I know we said we'd hold questions until the Q&A time, but I thought it might be maybe just very, very one sentence from each of the panelists on this question, because I do think it's relevant specifically to this group. And the question is, we've heard about the physical side effects, but how do other people handle the stress of knowing that you have a rare cancer and the drug may stop working? I think that's such a poignant question, and if any of the panelists have a very quick, brief insight. I know it's a question that deserves a lot more time and attention, and we can dig back into it later on, but at least maybe a quick touch on it now.
So my response to that question would be that yes, I stress immensely over if my body was to quit responding to Vitrakvi, what would the future hold for me? I know there's a second generation of the drug that would be an option, but the way I visualize my life right now is that tomorrow is not promised to anybody, and so I live not so much day to day, but I live more for the now than worrying about the future, because there's nothing in my control that I can do about it. So the best that I can do is make the best of each day that I have.
All right, thank you.
Yeah,
thank you for that.
Definitely a stress.
Ben. Yeah, Ben.
Kind of like Chris, I've grieved a lot about and stressed a lot about my mortality, and got pretty depressed before I started with TRKV. But once I got on it, I literally felt a new purpose, and it was a purpose not just to live for my family, but to help others and to spread the word about the technology. That's why I'm doing this today. But the main way I cope with my mortality is like Carter. I've come to grips with the fact that my life is limited, and we're all not guaranteed tomorrow. And of course, being a religious man, I've always been taught that, and now it's real. And so that's one of the things that gets me through the stress. I don't worry about when it's going to stop working nearly as much as what I see other people do.
Okay, thank you for that. And I feel like we do probably need to move on. But thanks to all the panelists for telling your stories. I will say just one thing about the stress component is that I think it's always good, and I heard this from you as everybody was speaking, is to think about, if it does stop, what's next, to have a plan, to be thinking about it ahead of time. And like you say, maybe a next generation or maybe something else. The cancer is a journey, and we never know exactly what it'll take. So thanks to all of our panelists. Sandra, thank you for a wonderful facilitation.